suing her ex-husband, Eric Bush, for the balance on an Isuzu rodeo. Lori says Eric is trying to pull a fast one.
Miss Torres, this gentleman used to be your husband.
Yes, ma'am.
And he was your husband for a relatively short period of time.
Yes, ma'am.
You and your husband decided that since you had resolved all of the financial issues, there were very limited financial issues, that you got one of those quick divorces you got in a little kit that you bought in a stationery store, 1, 2, 3, $50, in and out.
Yes, ma'am.
But this was the problem. When you separated, according to what I've read in your complaint, there were 2 cars.
Yes.
The 2 of you decided that he would keep the automobile that was titled in your name.
Yes, ma'am.
There was still a loan outstanding on that automobile, and Mr. Bush agreed that he would take full responsibility for that car by taking care of the payments on the car, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And taking care of the insurance on the car. Generally taking care of everything on the car. It was your car, but it was still in her name because you had lousy credit. So far, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you had the car for 6 or 7 months.
Yes.
So you had one car, she had the other. One car that you were driving was now your car, although it was in her name, was stolen.
Yes, ma'am.
When was it stolen?
Around March, end of March.
And in what month did you start driving the car exclusively? What month did you separate and take that car?
October, November.
That's 6 months.
Yes, ma'am.
In the time that you had the car, did your former wife drive the car?
No, ma'am.
When you were living together, did you have insurance on both cars?
Yes, ma'am.
When you took this car, did you get a separate policy of insurance?
No, ma'am.
How did you deal with it?
We both had both vehicles on the same policy.
Who paid the bill?
We split it. She paid what her car was, I paid mine.
So it all worked out beautifully?
Yes.
Until the car got stolen?
Yes.
And there was a deficit that was owed on the car to the loan company?
Yes.
Mr. Bush, you say that there was a $4,000 deficit. You wrote out a check for $2,000, and you said to Ms. Torres, I paid enough. Rest is yours.
No, ma'am. We spoke about this previously before the insurance came back and made the payment to the loan company, which didn't cover the remaining amount. We spoke about that previously, about splitting it.
You did?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, tell me about the conversation.
Well, ma'am, we spoke about it. I told her, you know, the car wasn't in my name. I didn't have the car. You know, he had it before we were married and even together. She made the bad decisions when she purchased the car, which put the car in debt automatically. And I told her, I said, you know, I've taken care of it. We've gone back and forth. You know, I didn't want the vehicle from the get-go, but I took it.
Just a second, listen to me. When you say you had discussions about it, did you come to an agreement? Is that what you're getting to? Or you
Yes,
just,
ma'am.
all I'm hearing is you told her. What did she agree to?
We agreed that whatever the insurance company did not pay, we would split it 50-50.
Good. Is that what you agreed to?
No, ma'am. There was no way I was in the position
Why would
to
she
make
do
a deal
that, Mr.
to
Bush?
pay for half of the vehicle.
Why would she do that?
I don't know. Because it was her
I don't
vehicle.
believe that she did. No, it was your car. Let me ask you this question, sir. Let's say you kept this car for 20 years and it became a classic. Not an old wreck, it became a classic. And during that 20 years' time that it's in her name, you finished paying off the car, you put a lot of money into the car, you put new paint into the car, you put new rims in the car, and you're going to sell it. And you have an opportunity to sell that car for a lot more than it was paid for initially. How would you feel if Ms. Torres came to you and said, listen, the car's in my name, I want the money? What would you say?
I'd be upset.
Oh, why would you be upset? The car's in her name.
Because I invested time into that.
Well, but you made bad choices.
Yeah.
You invested in a car that wasn't in your name. You invested in it, you put in rims on it, you put in new paint, you put in new insides, and all of a sudden she comes back and she says, listen, it was really nice of you. Car's in my name. I just sold it for $15,000. And you said, well, at least let's split it. She said, I don't want to split it with you. I want the whole thing myself. It's in my name. Isn't that what you're saying to me, Mr. Bush? You're saying I agreed to keep the car. She kept one. I kept the other. I made the payments faithfully, but something bad happened to the car. Why should I be responsible for what happened bad to the car when the car was in her name? Explain to me how that's different from the scenario that I just gave you.
She didn't invest a lot of time and money into that car. I did.
Do you see how foolish you sound, Mr. Bush? Very foolish. Now, you had a choice. You could have said, for all intents and purposes, this is my car, which is really what you said to her back in October. You said, it's my car. I can take my girlfriend out in it. I can take my fiancé out in it. I can take it to my wedding. I can take it on my honeymoon. You have nothing to do with this car. You do have a new girlfriend, right?
No.
Well, you did have,
I did.
because according to you, just a second. Maybe I'm thinking about the wrong Mr. Bush. Hold on a second. Are you the same Mr. Bush that wrote right here. I'm write a check for $2,000 directly to the finance company. What happened to that girlfriend?
It ended.
Did you give her back the $2,000?
Yes.
Oh, you see, you can't even look at me in the eye and say I gave her back the $2,000.
She got it back.
I doubt it. So, Mr. Bush, you see you did have a choice, sir. If this was your car, you could have increased the premium on the insurance and had a $500 deductible. If the car had been stolen, they would have paid you practically everything for the car, right? That was your choice. You could have paid a little bit more insurance, and the car would have been completely covered. It was your car. That was your agreement with her. It was going to be your car. You just couldn't have a car in your name, couldn't get it financed because you had bad credit. Why did you have such bad credit?
It's not because I had bad credit, ma'am. It's because I had my Harley loan, and the car that she's driving is in my name also. So with 2 vehicle loans to get another vehicle.
Was the Harley insured on the same policy?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. 3 months after he left, he reinsured it through our policy without my knowledge.
Just a second. So you know how to get cars covered, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is this your first marriage?
Yes, ma'am.
How long did it last?
Less than 1 year.
Perfect. You have no children together?
No, ma'am.
Even better. You say somebody was watching over me.
Definitely. Somebody was watching over me.
Right. Slick. How much is owed on the car? How much are they coming after you for?
The remaining balance is $2,226.37.
$2,226?
Yes, ma'am.
How many cents?
37 cents.
Can I see the letter, please?
That's the statement, and that's the remaining balance.
And the name of this loan company is?
Franklin Capital Corporation.
You don't mind if he writes his check directly to them, do you?
No, ma'am, but I'm also suing for the November payment and December payment I made for him.
Oh, you did?
Yes, ma'am.
2226 plus
$535 for November. January's late fees of $15. $528 for February, and $15 late fees for that also.
I have 3319. Mr. Bush, you have to act responsibly, sir. Ladies aren't going to bail you out forever. You're not that good looking. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $3,319. That's all.
Susan Pruitt says neighbor Crystal Burkins owes for causing her cats to be taken away by animal control. Crystal is countersuing, claiming Susan has been harassing her.
Miss Pruitt, you and the defendant are neighbors.
Yes.
She recently moved to the neighborhood, is that right?
Correct.
You have children?
Yes, ma'am.
How many children do you have?
1 at home.
And you?
8.
Are they all living with you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, it's a shame that you 2 people got off to a bad start, but according to what I've read, Miss Pruitt, you did just that, get off to a bad start. You don't like each other, that is clear. However, your complaint is you have cats. Cat had kittens. Miss Burkins found herself in possession of 3 of your kittens because they strayed onto her property, I assume. They're allowed to roam free?
They were in the front yard. Yes, ma'am.
Whatever. They weren't in your house. They got to her house. She corralled them, called animal control, and said, I have these 3 stray cats. They came and picked them up, and now they're at animal control, and you don't have the money to get them out. And you claim that this is a form of harassment. She did it with another one of your cats that got onto her property. Ms. Burkins says one of your cats scratched her child, and you should have kept your cats in your house. If you didn't keep them in your house and they come onto her property, she has every right to corral them and call animal control. That's your defense. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you said not only that, but she's been harassing you by sending nasty letters to neighbors and filing false police reports about you. You have a counterclaim. When did you move to the neighborhood, Miss Burkins?
In May 2005.
And I gather that your children played together, or some of your children played together, at least initially. Is that right?
When I first moved in, everything was great. We barbecued together. You know.
So what happened?
Well, little things started happening with the kids, and like one day one of the kids said fart, and she came over and had a problem with that. I mean, she blew up and said she was not going to have that language in her house. Personally, I'm
I don't
sorry.
care what personally. Go ahead. Tell me just the facts. Ma'am.
Okay, anyway, and then I started getting different letters with different things being said in them.
From whom?
Miss Pruitt.
Well, let me see them.
Okay. Also, an apology letter that my son wrote her for something that he said in her home on Father's Day.
What is this long letter? What is this?
That's what she does. She sits and just writes me letters like that. Just 6 pages, 7 pages, 8 pages. I guess she thinks she's a novelist.
These are all ridiculous letters. What happened with this relationship that you believe caused her to steal your cats?
Okay. When they first moved in May of '05, everything was okay for a couple of weeks, and then red flags started showing. Yes, I did complain to Chris about the kids' language. We don't use the kind of language, no matter what it is. If
Okay,
it's
so you
vulgar.
complained about the language.
I complained about the language. Other things like the children not respecting our home. And then her 14-year-old told me that her and her husband had arrest warrants. That's why they left Maryland. And I was concerned about that because we were neighbors. And so I emailed the sheriff's department and the county they were from, and he emailed me back and confirmed that. Which
Do you have a copy of the email?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me see it, please.
A couple weeks after that.
Just a second.
Okay.
Just a second. Okay.
Okay, well, a couple weeks after that, I had called Crystal to retrieve a toy that belonged to my son. And as soon as I got out, I said, Chris, can you have one of the kids bring it back over next door? It started the cussing, the F and B. Hey, what are you doing calling me, you F and B? So I hung up the phone. I called the police
Had you
department.
been contacted by the Maryland authorities?
No, ma'am. It's all taken care of.
Well, she has emails from the authority in Maryland that indicate that both you and your husband failed to complete the community service portion of a probation.
Right.
And as a result of that, warrants were outstanding for your arrest. That according to the police in Maryland, they did not intend to extradite you for that, but they said, and these had to do with, according to the police, bad checks. With their gratuitous advice, don't lend them any money, or take any checks, and stay clear.
Right.
Now, my question to you is, were you notified by anyone in Maryland that they had located you?
No. She comes screaming at me on 4th of July, I'm going to have you locked up and take your kids from you. So my kids are outside playing in a sprinkler. One of them said the F word again, fart, and she's like, that's it, I've had it. She said, I'm calling your landlord, and I'm getting you out of here. And she started freaking out, so I went and told my husband, I said, she's losing it again. I said, let's just go. So we spent 4th of July weekend in a hotel. My kids didn't even get to pop fireworks. They were miserable. She tried to take my daughter from me when we first moved in. And she told my daughter she was going to
Okay, so you went to a motel, Miss Perkins.
her name.
Listen to me. You went to a motel
Yes.
that night. When, for the first time, did you learn that Miss Pruitt had contacted the Maryland authorities?
4th of July. We were out there trying to have a good time.
Oh, just a second. On the 4th of July, did she tell you that?
She screamed it across the yard.
When, for the first time, did you call animal control and her cats?
Right here, I have that date.
Give me the
also.
date.
Here's the picture.
Just tell me what the date
Okay,
is.
the first time is the 9th, August
What?
9th.
So after the 4th of July. Now tell me where you found the cat that day.
In the yard, right under the bush, outside the carport.
Outside your house.
Yes, ma'am.
So what did you do?
Well, I didn't, but my daughter did. She picked it up and she put it in the cage, and we called animal control. But that cat, they retrieved. They went and got that cat.
Is this the same daughter that was scratched by the cat?
Yes, ma'am.
Which cat scratched your daughter?
The 3 that came on the property after.
Okay. Miss Pruitt, did animal control indicate to you that you should keep these cats in your house?
No, ma'am, they did not indicate that.
Well, they should have.
May I say one thing?
Sure.
Crystal had said that I
I don't care about a daughter.
Okay, well,
I couldn't have cared less about that whole tirade. Miss Pruitt, let me tell you what my problem is with your complaint. I read that she called animal control on one cat that had strayed onto her property. That would have said to any intelligent person, if I don't want my cats taken by animal control, I better keep them in the house.
I keep them in the house.
Well, you didn't. She didn't come in your house and get them.
The kitten stayed in the house. The day that they got this one, I don't know why Calico was outside. The second time they got the kittens, we were outside all day long. Within 30 minutes after we went in the house, whenever he went to look for them, the cats were gone.
Miss Pruitt, Miss Perkins did not come into your house and steal your cats.
No, she didn't.
Where did you find the cats the second time, Miss Perkins?
Same place. They go under that bush right outside the carport. They all get up under there. And I have a copy of the bite case, Your Honor. If you would like to see it.
I would.
Can I say something?
Sure. Who are you?
I'm Chris's husband, Gerald.
I figured you were, because you got very exercised when we started talking about these warrants. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that Miss Pruitt, she bribed my 14-year-old son as far as finding out information about us. She bribed him with a $60 PlayStation game at night.
Mr. Burkins, listen to me very carefully, sir. Your son should not know that his parents have outstanding arrest warrants for them. You know why he shouldn't know that his parents have outstanding arrest warrants? Because his parents shouldn't have outstanding arrest warrants. You don't blame son, you don't blame Miss Pruitt. If you have an outstanding arrest warrant, and if your wife has an outstanding arrest warrant, you go back to the state of Maryland and you take care of it. Isn't that right?
Yes, I agree.
Good. And it seemed to me, I would want to know as your neighbor if you're in the habit of writing bad checks. I don't know why your son felt compelled to tell that to Miss Pruitt.
He was mad at me because I wouldn't buy the game for him. I told him he had to earn the money.
Exactly.
And she went and bought
And
it for
she
him.
said, I'll buy it for you, Brett, but I want to know why your parents are here. And we didn't run.
Listen to me very carefully. You left Maryland without completing your community service.
25
which was
hours.
I don't care whether it was a half hour. If you wrote bad checks, you were given an opportunity, I assume, to stay out of jail. And the condition of that was that you perform community service. So not only did you commit a crime, but you committed a crime, and then you said to the justice system, conflict, I'm just moving. I'm leaving. Before you completed what you promised to complete. Because when the judge sentenced you, the judge said, this is what I'm going to do. Do you promise to complete community service? And you say, I'll do whatever is necessary to stay out of jail. If you had said, we're not going to do community service, they would have put you in jail for 60 days, or for 90 days, or for 6 months, and then you wouldn't have to do community service. You're supposed to do the right thing and teach your children to do the right thing. Why are you looking at me with some look of incredulity? Am I saying something that doesn't sound right to you?
No, ma'am.
Good.
May I say something, Your Honor?
No.
Okay.
No, because I just don't understand you. If they took one of your cats and they called animal control, so you know that they were angry with you, and they were angry with you in all probability because you had stirred up this muck about the Maryland warrants, then it would seem to me if you value your kittens, you keep them in the house. They did not come to your house to steal your cats, Miss Pruitt.
I offered the cat back.
You did not offer the cat.
Yeah.
Whether they did or whether they didn't, my issue is whether or not you have a lawsuit. And you don't. They have a right, if these animals are on their property, especially since they say that one of the kittens scratched their daughter. Whether they did or whether they didn't, and whether they were being vindictive or not. They might have been. They might have said, listen, she stirred up all this muck about us. We're going to call animal control if her cats come on our property again. It's your responsibility as a pet owner not to put your animals in harm's way. And if you have cats and you choose to let them be outside cats, somebody, them, other neighbors, some stranger 2 blocks away is going to take your cat and is going to say, I don't want this cat coming in my house. I don't want this cat coming around underneath and spraying and making mess around my house. If people want to have animals, they have to take care of them. And if you didn't take care of them to the extent that these people managed to get their hands on them, you have no lawsuit.
I know what you're saying, but I also know these people, and they did do it in a vindictive way. And
They may have, but we don't have a special
Saturday
court.
for the
We
kids
don't
to-
have a
I know.
special court for that. We don't have a special court for motives. I can say that it really wasn't the right thing to do. You could have just shooed them away and kept shooing them away. That's not what they pay me for.
Right.
They pay me to make a judgment as to whether or not you have a lawsuit, and you don't. Neither do you. You don't like each other. It's unfortunate that you don't like each other. Do you still live there?
Absolutely, and I'm not moving.
Good. Mr. and Mrs. Perkins, if I were you, I would go back to the state of Maryland and say, I'm sorry we left. I'd like to get this warrant discharged. I would like to complete my community service. I'm going to do that when my husband next has a 2-week vacation so that I can travel to all 50 states without risk of being arrested. Do I make myself clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Nicole Hendershot claims ex-boyfriend Kevin Gleason racked up over $6,000 on her credit card.
All right, Miss Hendershot, this used to be your boyfriend. And your complaint is that you made 2 loans to him. One was by giving him your credit card and allowing him to make some purchases on it. And then, since he wasn't paying you back, that you would get your money back as if he had a new job. And a new job needed new clothes. So he asked if you would loan him the money for some new clothes. You bought him $3,000 worth of clothes. And he paid you back nada. That's not the outfit she bought you, right?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
It's not GQ.
Kind of early gangster.
Mr. Gleason says that you were very, very nice to him, and all of the things that he purchased were gifts. How old are you, Miss Hendershot?
23.
Do you work?
Yep, full time.
What kind of job do you have?
Inventory manager at a car dealership.
You've been there for how long?
A year and a couple months.
How much do you earn annually?
Probably about $32,000.
Nice. You live by yourself?
I live with family.
You pay rent?
No.
What do you mean you live with a family?
I live with my grandparents.
Oh, so you don't pay rent?
I don't pay rent.
Eventually you're going to have to do that. Yes, you know.
It's expensive
They
in
made
New York.
a movie about that. Failure to launch. You got to launch one day. And what about you, Mr. Gleason? What do you do for a living, sir?
Right now, I just signed up for the National Guard, Army National.
How old are you?
21.
Signed up for the National Guard.
Yes, ma'am.
Before you signed up for the National Guard, what were you doing to support yourself?
Nothing, really.
Who do you live with?
I live with my grandmother.
What does she do for a living?
She used to housekeep.
And what does she do now?
She gets a pension, I do believe, from a past job that she had.
So she gets a small pension and she was doing housework.
Yes, ma'am.
And you were just laying home and eating food, doing what, Mr. Gleason?
Hanging out, friends.
While your grandmother was collecting a pension and cleaning other people's homes. Is that what you're telling me? I just want to get a picture of you, sir.
Yes.
Okay, Miss Hendershot, tell me about the first loan.
When I first met him, he told me that
When did you first meet him?
mid-September,
Where?
through a friend.
You mean somebody introduced you to him as a blind date?
Yeah.
Take that friend and cross them off the list. That person is not a friend to you. That person is his friend.
So we met mid-September, started dating. He told me his
When you went out with him, where would you go?
movies.
Who
something
paid?
to eat. Me or him.
Where'd you get money from?
I get a check in the mail from my parents.
For what?
They're both deceased, so I get a Social Security check from them, each of them.
Until you're how old?
I think it's home 25, I do believe.
How much do you get?
Around like $675. It like fluctuates.
A month?
Yes.
Even if you're over 21 years old?
Yes, ma'am.
And laying around your grandmother's house?
Yes.
This is some America. Okay, so sometimes you paid, sometimes he paid. You started dating and keep going.
Told me he had just quit his job.
What job did you have?
I worked at a Volkswagen dealer.
Doing what?
Off the books mechanic work, like filling up tires, making sure the cars were expected and all that.
And how much did they pay you off the books for that?
About like $20 a day.
$20 a day? Clearly on his way up the corporate ladder. Quit his job, putting air in tires for $20 a day, and... Go ahead.
He said he was in the military, so he was getting a check from that, but it was going into a bank account that he couldn't
He
touch.
was in the military.
That's what he told me.
Go ahead.
So he asked me if he can use my credit card for his cell phone bill. I said, okay.
Well, what was wrong with his credit card?
Well, he had bad credit because his ex-girlfriend had run up his credit cards while he was in Iraq, and now he has
When
bad
were you in
credit.
Iraq, sir?
Got me.
What?
Got me.
Okay, so you gave him your credit card to pay your cell phone bill, and what was he supposed to do? Pay you back?
Yeah, he was supposed to pay me back. I also authorized him to buy a TV for his car.
A TV for his car.
Granted that he would pay me right away.
Don't you feel like an idiot? But I guarantee you this, Mr. Gleason, if you don't feel like an idiot now, by the time you leave here, I'm hoping for better results.
Yes, ma'am.
It's not George Clooney, you know.
I've learned my lesson.
Why did you need a TV for your car?
I said I wanted one, and she offered to get it.
Well, who got it, you or she?
She got it, and she said, you have to pay it back. And then, around Christmas time, she's like, it's just a present for you. You can have it for Christmas.
You know you're going to get penalized for some of your stupidity, don't you?
Oh, I know. I was naive and stupid. I know that, and I've learned my lesson.
All right. When you got the bill, how much was the bill from the credit card?
I have authorized and unauthorized charges in September and October.
You have the bill for September?
Mm-hmm.
I want to see it. Okay. Now let me see October statement. This is all his stuff?
Mm-hmm.
All of his stuff?
Mm-hmm.
What are you, out of your mind? What are you, out of your mind?
I guess so.
No, you're not. You're just a spoiled brat. Paid your credit card bill, paid your Sprint bill, you went to the drugstore, you filled up your car with gas, bought yourself a pair of shoes. Tiffany and Company?
He bought me my promise ring on my credit card.
Who bought jeans?
She wanted me to get jeans to go away to Florida to meet her parents.
You actually took him to meet your parents?
Yeah.
What'd they say?
We'll see.
Is that what they said to you? We'll see?
They said you're smart. I know you make the right decisions, and, you know, it's your relationship. You have to live it.
Now let's get to the close, Miss Hendershot. So after he didn't pay you back this and you saw that he was abusing your trust in October, you went out and you did something really stupid. You continued to see him. You continued to be involved with him. And in January of 2006, you do what?
I bought him suits for his new job. He was a salesman, so he needed suits. So I offered to buy him. He agreed. We went to the store, and we bought them together. And he lost a job a couple weeks later, started another job. Lost that. I never saw a paycheck from the first job. He had an agreement that the paychecks would go to me for the suits.
I never agreed to taking the suits. I never even wanted the suits. She just wanted me to be some white-collar business guy. I mean, we would go to the stores and she'd offer to buy them, and I was like, I don't want them. And she'll sit there and pick a fight with me, so I'll just let her do whatever she wanted.
What about this stuff, sir? These are your purchases. You had the card at that time.
The shoes are not my purchases, and only one guess is mine.
Take this over, please, Bird, to Mr. Gleason. Have him look at that and tell me what he acknowledges. You see, Mr. Gleason, listen to me very carefully, sir. It's clear to me that there was only one card, and that one card, I believe, was in your possession. Now, understanding that, you may go through that bill and tell me what's not yours, but be prepared to be grilled, Mr. Gleason. Grilled, sautéed, and poached. All right. The things that you circled are yours or not yours?
Not mine. The thing that I checked is the one that she wanted me to go down to Florida with, the jeans. And
She can't wear your jeans, sir. What your statement is that these are all gifts. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Wrong. Did you tell him that the TV for his car was a gift Christmas time?
No. I said I'm going to pay it off since you don't have the money right now, but when you get a job, I'd like the money, because I didn't want it on my credit card balance.
Well, you can't have it on your credit card, otherwise you'll have credit like he did when he went to Iraq and his girlfriend racked up all those charges. She didn't make that up, did she? That you told her you had a girlfriend and that...
My ex did rack up my credit card.
When you were in Iraq? Huh?
No.
So you lied about that?
Yes.
When you lied to her about that, did you lie to her convincingly?
Kind of, because she wanted an image.
No, don't tell me what she wanted. I want you to tell me like you told her, just like you told her. I was in Iraq and my girlfriend maxed out my credit cards and so I have lousy credit. I want you to tell me exactly how you told that to her.
I said when I was...
Look at me. Like, because you looked at her in the eye, right?
Kind of.
Tell me what you said to her, just like I'm looking at you.
I said to her, my ex-girlfriend racked up my credit card while I was away in Iraq.
Did you tell her how you paid off the credit cards?
Oh, I still have them going on dispute.
Why do you have them going on dispute?
Because she took my credit card without my permission. I gave it to her once, her pay off her credit card.
Yes.
And then she took my credit card without me, like, physically handing it to her.
Right.
And then I started getting bills in the mail.
How'd you feel about that?
I mean, it hurt, but...
How badly did it hurt?
50%, I guess.
50%. If you had 100% of a brain, it probably would have hurt you 100%. Since you only have 50% of a brain, it only hurt you 50%. Now, when you got the first bill, did you confront your girlfriend?
At the time, I tried to confront her, but she kept hanging up.
Did you sue her?
No.
Did you call the police?
I filed a report on it.
You did? So you were really angry?
Yes, ma'am.
Because somebody took advantage of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Somebody took your credit card, somebody who you trusted, your girlfriend, and racked up a whole bunch of bills and ruined your young credit, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So what'd you feel? You had the right to do it to somebody else?
No.
Figure if a girl can do it to a guy can do it to a girl.
Yes.
Mr. Gleason, if I were your grandmother, your bag would be packed on the front porch by the time I got home. It's time you grew up, because you're a user. You're using the federal government to support yourself when there's no reason for it. You look like an able-bodied, strong, well-nourished 21-year-old. You're taking advantage of your grandmother, who's living on a small pension and cleaning other people's houses to take care of you. And you took advantage of this young lady who cared for you, wanted only the best for you. You are, Mr. Gleason, at this point in your life, a bum. The sooner you start correcting it, the sooner you're going to be not a bum. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Judge for the plaintiff in the amount of $5,000. That's all.
Mark Horner claims former tenant Jacob Scott damaged his truck tub cover. Jacob is countersuing for the return of his bed and mountain bike.
Mr. Horner, this sort of comes under the category of no good deed goes unpunished.
Yes, ma'am.
Is this your wife?
Yes, ma'am.
And?
My daughter-in-law?
You and your wife befriended Mr. Scott. He had been a friend of your son's?
Correct.
And at some point, you allowed him to move into your home.
Yes.
Where's your family?
My parents live in Plainville, Massachusetts. I'm currently residing with them.
Was there any reason why you weren't residing with them when you moved in with the Horners?
When I graduated from high school, I kind of made a promise to myself that I wasn't going to be one of those kids that stays living with their parents, and I had moved out. And my roommate at the time decided he wanted to move back in with his parents, and I still, you know, didn't want to move back in and be one of those kids. And they had offered for me to move in and pay rent, so I took them up on the offer, and I was paying $75 a week to live with them.
And you were also doing some work for them.
Yes, ma'am. I was working for Mark as a maintenance worker, and I had also worked during the Patriots games for Mark at one of his sausage stands.
That's your business?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this is what the lawsuit is about. At some point, Mr. Scott was driving a truck of yours, and he rear-ended somebody and caused some damage to the front end of your truck.
Yes, ma'am.
You agreed with him that he would either pay the deductible, which was $1,000, or fix the truck.
Yes.
Did you do either of those two things?
No, ma'am. When this originally happened...
No, I'm just answering my question. So the answer is no.
No, ma'am.
And sometime later, you and your wife were going away for a holiday. Mr. Scott was remaining in the house, and according to your complaint, you said to him, no parties.
Correct.
You came back unexpectedly because there was a death in the family, and you found evidence of party.
Looked like he partied like a rock star.
And subsequently, you found the hot tub cover ripped.
Not only ripped, but there was food particles, cigarette butts, beer caps floating in the hot tub.
In the hot tub. Nasty.
Nasty.
And you and Mr. Scott then got into a heated discussion. He left.
Correct.
And when he left his bed and his bicycle, which he wants back, which is the subject of his counterclaim.
Yes, ma'am.
He says that you told him until you sign a promissory note to pay for the damage to the hot tub and the truck, you don't get your stuff back.
Correct.
Mr. Scott says that you told him to forget about the truck.
When the accident had originally occurred, the deductible, I was told the deductible was $500, and we had come to an agreement where I wouldn't have to pay it because the person he was supposedly selling the truck to hadn't paid anything for it, and the truck was 13 years old and had over 200,000 miles on it, and it was only about a softball-sized dent in the front bumper.
I have pictures of the truck.
Okay, so according to you, he said forget about it.
Yes.
And about the damage to the hot tub?
Actually, I have my witness here, Leanne. She's a friend of mine. She was at the house Sunday when they had come home, and she can testify that there was no rip in the hot tub cover Sunday when we were done, and we were not the last people in the hot tub cover. I had come home Tuesday night with a friend of mine, and Susan and Mark's daughter-in-law and her husband, Susan's son Peter, were in the hot tub, and we believe
You mean
that...
with the sausages and the cigarette butts?
No, that stuff had been taken out and cleaned.
Mr. Scott, the Horners allowed you to live with them, and Mr. Horner, is no question, asked you not to, no parties. You violated that trust by having a party.
We had actually, I had only had about 5 friends over.
Throughout the entire time that you were there, Mr. Scott?
No, but I never
Mr.
threw a party.
Scott, look, I want you to watch. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
I've had 20-year-olds, a whole gaggle of them. When 20-year-olds know that there's a free house, it's never just 5 people. Mr. Scott, do you understand? So if you want me to believe other things that you're telling me, and I'm sure you do, I'm going to ask you again. How many people were at the house?
There was only 5 people there.
At one time?
Yes, because I had lived in 2 previous houses before I moved in with Mark and Susan, where I had paid the mortgage myself, and I had pretty much gotten the partying out of my system. I quit drinking. I don't drink anymore, and it's just... we were hanging out, having a good time, trying to unwind on a weekend.
Well, who do you think it was that was a pig in the group of 5 that you had then, who put food in the hot tub and cigarette butts and cans? Which one of your 5 friends?
It was my buddy Greg. He had admitted to it.
He had admitted to it before they found it?
Well, I had told him that they had found parts of a sausage in the hot tub, and there were beer caps and everything, and he said, oh, the sausage was probably from me because he was the only one eating in the hot tub.
So I assume that if you had seen him eating in the hot tub, Mr. We don't do that.
I should have.
Did you see him?
I did, and I didn't say anything to him.
Did you see him smoking in the hot tub?
I did. Everybody was smoking in the hot tub.
And throwing their cigarette butts in the hot tub?
I didn't see anybody throw a cigarette butt in the hot tub. And
Well, did you take out ashtrays for everybody?
There were ashtrays out there.
Did anybody use them? You must have been aware of that unless you had been drinking.
Yes, ma'am, people did use them. The next day, when we were going through the hot tub, we had only found parts of sausages in the filter. I didn't see any cigarette butts in the hot tub at all. And
Well,
I didn't
Mr.
see any
Scott,
beer
let me
caps.
tell you this. When you abuse a privilege, I have to assume that the people who disrespected the Horner's property also ripped their cover.
Okay.
Because otherwise, why would Mr. Horner claim, after being so nice to you, they were nice to you, weren't they?
Well, the whole relationship we had was there was a lot of verbal abuse there. Mark especially was constantly putting me down, calling me, and I'm quoting him here, he was always calling me a dump. Him and his wife were both always calling me a dump. He called me pardon my French, on numerous occasions, and he used to go around bragging to everybody that I was his, because I was helping out around the house and still paying $75 a week. And at the time, I had just gone with all of this because I didn't want to cause any tension because I was living there under their roof.
Do you have children?
I do.
How many children?
I have 3 children.
How old are they?
My oldest is 23, and then I have
Where is the 23-year-old?
My 23-year-old is in the service. He's stationed at Fort Campbell in Kentucky.
And then you have
I have a 20-year-old.
Where is that child?
He lives with his girlfriend.
Well, that doesn't warm my heart. And what else?
And I have a 16-year-old at home.
And I have a 9-year-old.
Who lives with?
Her mother.
Who you visit?
Constantly.
And support?
Yes.
Mr. Scott says that you called him a lot of vile names. Is that true?
I definitely called him a dump.
When did you do that?
He got, I believe it was his 12th or 13th moving violation and lost his driver's license. So we particularly told him that he was a dump for that. He lost...
Just a second.
It was my 8th in 4 years.
Just a second. 8th in 4 years?
Yes, ma'am.
He's right.
Ma'am, that wasn't the only occasion.
Just a second. I'm going to get the rest of them. But right now, that would have been worth at least a couple. I could tell that you are presenting yourself as a young man who is totally responsible and thoughtful, and you sound that way.
Thank you.
But I'm looking at these people and I'm saying to myself, this is not a couple that brought you into their home to use as a slave and berate you. So I want to find out if they did, in fact, call you a dump, if they had good reason to do that. 8 moving violations in 4 years fits.
He also had 2 while he was waiting for his suspension to come over.
And so that was worth at least 2 more.
Yeah, so they took his license away.
Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Let's sort of cut to the chase here because I don't want to torture you any further.
Thank you.
You have to... You're welcome. Because I don't want to hear anything else about you because you wore a tie to court and speak well, and I'm sure you're going to try to put your life together. This is your...
This is my friend Leanne.
Not a girlfriend?
No.
You weren't eating sausages in the hot tub, Leanne. You have to give him back his bed and his bike. He's going to pick it up within 5 days.
Thank you.
I'd like to see the pictures of the truck.
Ma'am?
What?
The one thing I'm concerned about with the bed is there was an incident back when Mark's father died. He was having some trouble with his brother, and he had actually taken pictures of him urinating on his brother's bed. And I'm just worried that they had done something to my bed while it was in their possession.
I'm not going to dignify that question with an answer. Do you want your bed back or not?
Yes, ma'am.
I have pictures of the bed, Your Honor, if you want to see them.
No, I don't have to see pictures of the bed. I'm looking at the front end of this truck. It looks like a little dent, sir. Does it interfere with its driving?
It does not interfere with its driving. There's a tow hook that was smashed off the bottom of it. The grill is cracked. I have an estimate here from the body shop.
Let me see the estimate. Okay. How much is a new hot tub cover, or how do you fix that?
It wasn't, it had to be replaced. Here's the
Okay.
receipt. It was $400.
How much was it?
It was $398 plus tax.
He's responsible for the tax. How much was the tax?
$420.
You living back with your folks, Mr. Scott?
Yes, ma'am.
What are you going to do with yourself?
Actually, in October, I'm going to be moving down to St. Petersburg, Florida.
To do what?
For a change, I'm going to become a construction worker down there. That's what I do up here, but just to get away from New England and a new scenery.
Where it's
really.
warm.
Exactly.
Who do you know in St. Petersburg?
A friend of mine lives down there, so a close friend of mine. I grew up with her, so she's got an apartment down there. She's going to school down there, and
You might want to try that, Mr. Scott. School is not terrible.
I was thinking about it, but I work 7 days a week now. I love to work. Both my jobs, I landscape on the weekends, and I'm a construction worker on the weekdays.
You have your driver's license back?
No, ma'am, I do not. I actually get it back in 21 days.
Try to hold on to it this time, please.
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Scott. Get your bed back and your bike in 5 days. Judgment for the plaintiff on your claim for $1,420. Thank you. Good luck.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
John White says co-worker Toriano Harris owes for injuring his eye. John says Toriano ripped his cornea when he tackled him at a party.
According to your complaint, sir, you were at a New Year's Eve party.
Yes.
Mr. Harris was at the same New Year's Eve party, and you claimed that he was pretty drunk, and while not intentionally, while horsing around, he seriously injured your eye.
True.
Mr. Harris says everybody was sort of fooling around and butting each other. He didn't injure you, you were just fine, and he questions whether or not he exacerbated this pre-existing eye injury that you had.
Right.
What time did you get to the party?
Probably around 12:30.
Who did you go with?
Kathy.
Where had you been before?
At another party.
Who was driving?
I was.
Were you drinking?
Yeah.
How come you were drinking and driving?
And got caught up in the celebrations.
Was she drinking?
No.
Why didn't you let her drive?
Wasn't thinking at the time.
How much had you been drinking?
Couple cups of champagne, maybe.
Whose party was this that you arrived at 12:30?
Another co-worker's, another friend.
What time did you arrive at the party?
It was a little before 12, about 11:30.
Where had you been previous to 11:30?
I live across the street, so I walked across the street to the party.
So you hadn't had any alcohol before 11:30?
Nope. Ma'am.
And what were you drinking between 11:30 and 12:30?
Had about 2 beers.
Who did you come to the party with?
By myself.
Were you by yourself the beginning part of the evening?
Yes, I was.
That sounds pretty lonely on a New Year's Eve, Mr. Harris.
Well, I had just got off work, and then I went home and found out it was a party across the street, and it was somebody who I work with. So I was invited, so I walked across the street.
Okay, so now that we've laid the foundation of this evening, you were there by yourself, you had a date, you arrived at 12:30, you arrived at 11:30, you were sober as a judge.
Yes, ma'am.
Before 11:30, after that, you had a couple of beers.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what happened at 12:30 when you arrived, Mr. White.
I came in the house, I mingled a little bit, had some more drinks. Probably 45 minutes to an hour after that time of mingling. Mr. Harris here was just a little bit out of control. He was obviously way drunker than he said he was. He was so out of control that me and some of the other guests removed ourselves from the living room of the party to like the front porch, patio type area, holding the door, keeping him from coming in. He eventually got up there on the patio where he continued his behaviors.
Describe his behavior to me, please.
Out of control is the only word I can use. He jumping around, spitting liquor at us, loud, screaming. Got down into like a football stance and just rushed me.
Describe that to me. Show me. What's a football stance?
Out here?
Yeah.
A football stance.
Okay, that kind of, okay. All right.
Brushed my legs, grabbed me by the legs, and I don't know if he was trying to put me in a wrestling move or just whatever, but as I was going down, his head hit my eye, causing the stitches that I had from a previous surgery to bust. And
What kind of surgery had you had on your eye?
I had a cornea transplant.
When?
September 20th.
You have the medical records for me?
Yes.
I'd like to see them, please. That's the injury that you're talking about, being bumped in the head by him and
Yes.
the stitches coming apart.
As
Did you go to the emergency room that day?
Yes, I did.
Who took you?
My friend here, Kathy. I actually went home to... Went back to
Kathy,
the
you have a
hospital.
last name. You took him to the emergency room?
Yes.
Immediately after being bumped in the head, did you leave the party?
Well, after I got hit in the eye, like I say, he took me to the ground. I think that was the initial impact. And once I was on the ground, he went for probably a headlock and came across my eye again, taking me back to the ground as I was getting up. And at that point, it was when I crawled to the bathroom, tried to wipe the little blood that I did have, and then I left the party.
How many surgeries did you have subsequent to this incident?
3.
Were you scheduled to have any other surgeries after?
No.
The initial corneal transplant?
Right. I was doing.
We're doing
fine. In the period of my recovery process.
Okay, Mr. Harris. I'm going to hear you, sir.
We was at the party. We had a couple drinks. I had a couple drinks. I knew he was already there, and he was already drinking, because I can already tell the way he was talking.
You arrived first.
No, he arrived first.
No, you arrived first. You said you arrived at 11:30. They didn't arrive until 12:30.
No, he was there first before me.
Okay, keep going.
I already knew that he had been drinking because the way the slur of his speech he was talking. As the struck clock to 12, we all just was having fun. It was party, horse playing, high five. We bumped chests. Then all of a sudden, a buddy of mine had picked me up. I'm looking around like, what's going on? You know what I'm saying? So then all of a sudden, he grabbed me. So when he grabbed me, I broke him off of me. And then he fell to the ground, I guess injuring his eye then. He was the aggressor. I wasn't the aggressor. He put his hands on me first.
Did you see what happened?
No, he did. I was in the other room. I'm the one just witnessed.
Tell me your name, sir.
My name is Brian Dukes.
Do you know both of these gentlemen?
Yes, ma'am.
How long have you known them?
About 3 years.
Both?
Yes.
Both nice people?
Yes, yes.
Okay. What time did you arrive at the party that night?
It was after midnight.
Were you out on the porch when this incident
Yes,
occurred?
ma'am.
Tell me what you saw, please.
I'm pretty much a witness to his pretty much out of control behaviors, Mr. Harris. He pretty, like Mr. White here said, he did get down, crouch down in the football stands, and did attack Mr. White here.
Just describe to me what you saw. He got down in a football stance.
Football stands. Then he like just rushed him, just grabbed his legs and like took him down to the ground.
Did you assist him in cleaning up his eye?
No, ma'am.
You were just a guest at the party?
Yes.
Did you come with an escort?
No, ma'am.
Were you the only one with a date that night?
No. No.
Okay. I read your complaint that you had a video.
Yes.
Somebody was taking pictures of that
The
evening.
homeowner of the party actually was recording the whole incident.
I'd like to see it, please. Mr. Dukes, you can have a seat, sir.
Thank you.
This is the point here. This was like I said, well past 12:30. He's actually finna start spitting liquor at us. You can't hear it, but he's screaming, yelling, profanity, whatnot. This in the background. This the patio. Now this the patio area here where we at. One of the that's the homeowner's friend, telling him that he needs to go, but he's not hearing anything. That's the charge. Right there, you can see me holding my eye as I'm going back. And he jumps on me again. I'm trying to get up now. I brought back down. At this point here, this is where I told him, I didn't use these words, but you just messed my eye up. And he was like, all right, get up, I got you. I'm crawling off into the bathroom now. As he comes back out, he attempts to do this again, but he will stop. This was a separate person here, separate incident. And so that's the homeowner there. At this point, she was just really fed up with him. That's him hitting the door, banging on her front door, glass door.
What you're supposed to say, Mr. Harris, is, I drank too much, I was an idiot. I'm sorry I hurt you, and I'm going to pay your bills. You're not supposed to make excuses, sir. Have you seen this video before?
No.
You've never seen it before?
Never seen it
Why
before.
didn't you show him this video before? Maybe he would understand the nature of his actions.
In this process, I've reached out to him twice, not asking him to pay the bills, just to help me. Like I said, we have been friends for some time. I knew that he didn't just have this money in his pocket, but if he would have just assisted... No, I don't. But if he had just assisted with the help, we probably wouldn't be here.
I'm waiting.
If he knew that his eye was messed up, why would he come to a party and have fun anyway? I mean, but you know, sometimes when you're at a party, everybody get, you know, everybody horseplay. At least they do where I'm from.
You want to take this one, or what do you want me to do?
I don't know. There are good questions and there are bad questions. That's a bad question.
You know that if you have some delicate surgery, the chances of that surgery becoming infected, inflamed, that can become dislodged, that happens. Is what you're suggesting, sir, that if you have this kind of surgery, you stay in your room? You work at a place where I assume sometimes it gets physical.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Yes.
That's his job. So he has to go to work. And you take care as best as you can to make sure that the people that you're working with don't hurt you, don't exacerbate a condition that already exists. When you go to a New Year's Eve party, you expect to have a little bit of alcohol, sometimes, and sometimes you even expect people to act stupid. You don't expect them to act very stupid. And when you act very stupid, Mr. Harris, and you hurt somebody, you have to be responsible and pay for it, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me ask you this question, sir. You live across the street from this party.
Yes, ma'am.
You were pretty drunk.
Yes, ma'am.
Let me give you this scenario. You're walking back to your house, and you're pretty drunk, and you're not looking where you were going. And a car is coming down the street. They're perfectly fine. Nobody's drinking in that car. They're driving. But you dart out into the middle of the street, and that car swerves to avoid you. And the people in that car are seriously injured because they hit a tree. Are you going to tell me that you think on New Year's Eve people shouldn't drive their cars because drunks sometimes walk in the middle of the road? That's the same kind of philosophy that you're trying to sell me when you say, listen, when you go to a New Year's Eve party, everybody gets drunk and they horse around. You can horse around without being an idiot. Would you like to show your boss that video?
I don't want to show nobody the video.
Well, you should have thought of that before you came here, Mr. Harris. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $3,000. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Lori Abarca says former client Matthew Finch pulled his kids out of her daycare without notice. Matthew is countersuing, claiming Lori made a false CPS report.
Mrs. Abarca, this is a pretty nasty case. According to your complaint, the defendant is the former husband of your best friend.
Yes.
What's your former wife's name?
Stacy.
Stacy. And they have 2 children. And you were providing daycare in your home for their 2 children.
Correct.
And subsequent to their separation, you took care of the children for how long?
Approximately 9 months, from August of 2004 until April 1st of 2005.
And then it is your claim that Mr. Finch, without cause, removed the children from your daycare. He did, in fact, give you 2 weeks' notice and paid you, according to what I've read here, for the 2 weeks' notice.
Yes.
That's correct.
But your claim is that Mr. Finch knew that he had an obligation to keep the children there, so you want him to pay for daycare for how long?
I just want him to pay for daycare up until the date that their mother gave me the 2 weeks' notice, because she was the only one that was able to make the daycare decision per their court order.
Just shh. Don't.
Okay.
On what date did she give you the 2 weeks' notice?
I believe it was May 12th.
Okay. So let's deal with that part of the complaint first.
Okay.
You'll get into the incident because there's much more to this case than these few weeks. When Mr. Finch gave you the 2 weeks' notice on April 1st and tendered payment for those 2 weeks, did you take his payment?
Yes.
So then let us deal with this issue swiftly.
Okay.
You're entitled to nothing. If you said to Mr. Finch, I'm not taking your money, it is my friend who is responsible for giving me the 2 weeks' notice, not you, I would go on with that part of your lawsuit. But since you took his money, I'm not entertaining any money for April or 2 weeks in May. Now let's move on to the next part of your claim. The next part of your claim is that there was an incident on or about April 1st involving your husband and the defendant. And as a result of that, Mr. Finch called the state licensing board and made false allegations against you. Mr. Finch said what he reported to the state licensing board was true, correct?
That's correct.
The counterclaim that I have by Mr. Finch is that you called Child Protective Services complaining about Mr. Finch and alleging that he in some way inappropriately touched one or both of his children. That's the allegation.
Right.
So, did you in fact call Child Protective Services?
I did.
On what date?
April 4th.
And what did you tell them in this 4-4 report?
I told them that his oldest daughter, Kiana, for the last month and a half had been reacting extremely badly when he would come to pick her up. She would start crying hysterically. She would run to the background, anybody, my children, my husband, myself, that she could get to.
Is that what you told the state so far?
Yes.
What else did you tell them?
And I told them that I felt that there was something going on at the house. I didn't know what, but I know that somebody needed to investigate it. When I did make that phone call, Stacy was right beside me, in full agreement with me calling, because for several weeks before...
Don't tell me about Stacy.
Okay. For several weeks before, I had spoken to Stacy and Matt about Kiana's behavior. It would be so bad at times that he would come to pick up both of the girls and have to leave with just Lexi, the little one, and leave Kiana at my home until her mother or her stepfather could come and pick her up because she wouldn't go with him.
Doesn't... Shh. Okay.
So I confronted Stacy about what was going on and told her that I was very uncomfortable with the way that Kiana was reacting and that I was very concerned that something was happening over at his house.
No, she doesn't include that.
This revelation, Ms. Abarca, that you had to call and make a substantive report to Child Protective Services did not occur until after Mr. Finch removed the children from your daycare. Is that correct?
Yes and no.
Yeah. The first time that you called and made a substantive report, despite what you say you had been seeing for the last month and a half, is 3 days after he removed the children from your daycare.
Yes.
There's certain hard data, and then there's certain soft data. Your conversations with your friend Stacy is soft data. The timing of these events is hard data, which in my view very often suggests that you can make a leap with regard to things like motive. You get me?
Yes.
Good. Now, did you subsequently go to the family court with regard to her allegations of abuse?
Yes, I did.
And was there a hearing?
There was a hearing.
And subsequent to the hearing, was your time with your children diminished, supervised, increased?
Stayed the same. We were sent to family court counseling after that.
Who was?
Me and my ex-wife.
Just the two of you?
Correct.
And did you both go to counseling?
I requested private mediation. I figured 1 hour with the family court services was not efficient time to handle this situation, and therefore I was granted time to get a private mediation.
And as a result of the mediation, what happened?
My time was increased.
To what?
To 50%.
It had been previous to that, how much?
It was only 37% time.
Subsequent to the call to Child Protective Services, was your daughter subjected to a physical examination?
Yes, both daughters were. And I do have the report here.
Can I see it,
Would you like to
please?
see it? For both daughters.
Their mother requested it when she took them for those exams. It wasn't
CPS
court ordered.
requested
It wasn't court ordered or anything through CPS. Stacy called and made those appointments.
Listen to me, madam. What you're giving me is hearsay. The objective data is you made a report. As a result of that report and subsequent to that report, these children were subjected to physical examinations. That was precipitated by your call. And if their mother had seen signs that she felt were untoward, she could have taken the children without your call to Child Protective Services. Your call to Child Protective Services inspired this action. Now I want to know what happened April 1st.
Okay. April 1st, Matt calls me probably around 5 o'clock, letting me know that he's on his way to pick up the girls.
And how many days a week had he picked up the children?
He picked them up at least 85% of the 9 months that they were with me, because their mother would work nights and evenings and stuff like that.
How old are your children?
They're 6 and 8 now.
So now he came to pick up the children on April 1st.
He had called me and let me know he was coming to get them. And
As I do every day.
Listen, if you interrupt again, it's not going to go well for you. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
So far, you don't feel as if I'm favoring her, do you?
Not at all.
Then keep your mouth shut until I look at you and ask you a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Go.
His phone call was that he wanted to change his payment dates on the way over. I said, no, we're not going to change them. They're in a contract. You've signed it. This is the way that it's been for 9 months. And he got very angry.
No, just a second. Did he tell you why he wanted to change his payment dates?
No, he didn't.
Okay. And you said, no, you can't.
Right.
If your friend Stacy had called and said, I'd like to change the payment date, what would you have answered her?
I would have talked to her about it.
Right.
Which is what I tried to do with Matt.
No, that's not what you said. You said absolutely not.
Okay.
That's what you just told me.
Well,
I'm
you're
just
right.
repeating your words.
Well, no, actually, he called me and told me he wanted to change the payment dates.
And you just told me, you said, absolutely not, you have a contract.
And I said to him, well, your payment's due today. And he then told me that he wasn't going to pay me when he came to pick up the girls and got angry and started yelling at me. And I said to him, you know what, Matt, you have a contract with me. These are the same dates you've always made payment.
Continue.
Don't speak to her! And it's not your job to tell her to continue. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
You keep saying, yes, ma'am. Is there something wrong with you? Do you have problem controlling yourself?
Not at all.
Well, it seems to me you do. Go ahead.
He got very hostile with me on the phone, yelling and screaming.
No,
so
you
I
were
said,
hostile.
Well, no.
You were hostile.
It was a reaction to him.
You know what the big mistake was?
What's that?
The big mistake was choosing you as a daycare provider. When you have a best friend who is divorcing her husband, and there are bad feelings that exist between the two people, to have someone as a child care provider who is aligned with one of the parents is a monumental mistake. Monumental. Because you are emotionally invested in his ex-wife and her welfare, not emotionally invested in his welfare, and that comes through loud and clear. Having said that, we will move on. So he came to pick up the children, and what happened, Ms. Abarco, when he came to pick up the children?
When he came to pick up the kids, my husband went outside to go talk to him because we'd had many, many incidences with his youngest daughter, Lexi, being physically abusive to our son. And it was just...
This is the husband?
This is my husband.
What was he doing home?
He was already done working for the day.
What kind of work does he do?
He's a forklift mechanic for Toyota.
Let me understand this, Ms. Abarca. You sent him outside.
No.
You said you were inside with the girls, so your husband went outside to speak to him.
Right.
Well, you must have, when you got off the phone, said to your husband, he's coming over and he says he's not going to pay me. Got to discuss that with him. And you have to discuss with him his daughter's aggressive behavior, right?
Yes, I spoke to him about the phone call with Matt and about the incident we had just had with Lexi and Cole on Matt's way over to come and pick up the girls.
Well, why don't you tell me about the incident between your son, who was how old?
At that time, he was 18 months old.
And the daughter, who was how old?
Lexi was 5.5.
So why don't you tell me about that incident?
I believe on that day, she pushed him down. She would pull his hair and pull him down. You know, just different little things like that that were constant. And I sat down with Lexi, and I said, you know, Lexi, we've been having a lot of problems with this kind of behavior. What is wrong? Why is it that you and Cole can't seem to get along? What can we do to change it? And she says to me that her father told her that if there's something she wants or Cole does something that she doesn't like, then she can basically take matters into her own hand. If she needs to push him away from her or do something like that, that's what he told her. The 8-year-old daughter, Kiana, was there as well. Kiana confirmed that was the discussion that they had in their vehicle and also stated that there was a boy she was having problems with at school, and Matt told her that if he continued to bother her, she could go ahead and punch him.
Where were you when this was going on with the 5-year-old and your 18-month-old?
I was in my dining room.
And where were they?
They were in my living room, which there's a huge opening.
Shh. That's not supposed to happen. It's your responsibility if the 5-year-old pushes down the 18-month-old. It's your responsibility because you are providing inadequate supervision of the children. I don't care whether you agree or not.
Children are children.
That's absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And a 5-year-old may push down an 18-month-old, and an 18-month-old may pull a 5-year-old's hair.
Right.
Or may take something away, and the 5-year-old says you can't do that.
Absolutely.
You just answered your own question.
Lori Abarca claims former client Matthew Finch owes for daycare fees, defamation of character, and a false police report.
Stand up. All right. Mr. Abarca, you tell me what you said to Mr. Finch when you went outside.
I walked up to Mr.
Look
Finch.
at me. You walked up to Mr. Finch and said...
He was still in his vehicle. I explained to him...
No, tell me what you said.
I said, Matt, there was a situation with the 2 kids. Lexi approached Cole, grabbed the ball from him, pushed it back into his chest, and then grabbed him by his hair and pulled him to the ground. When Lori confronted Lexi about it, Lexi explained that if she felt somebody was picking on her, it would be all right for her to go ahead and do something back, retaliate.
Okay. So your wife said to you that the little girl said, my daddy says it's somebody is picking on me, then I have the right to do something back to them. Correct?
Correct.
And what did Mr. Finch say to you?
He got out of his car, said he never said that, got into my face, I explained to him, would you please not allow Lexi to retaliate, that if she has a problem, she needs to go to Lori. I don't appreciate our baby being pulled down to the ground by his hair, and that conduct is not okay.
Mrs. Abarca, I have 11 grandchildren. I've seen them all playing around together.
Right.
If one of them, who's 5, gets annoyed at one of them, who's 2, because they pulled something out of their hand, they'll push them. That's not cause for World War III.
No, you're right.
That just
I agree.
happens.
I agree, but it was much more severe than that. And I have statements that I've written to Matt for suspensions, breaking down the situations. I believe I gave you copies of all of those.
Why did you give them to Matt instead of Stacy?
Because Matt was the one that came and picked up the children most of all the time.
Ms. Abarca, this was your best friend's children.
Right.
Are you telling me that you didn't get on the phone in the evening after each of these instances and say to Stacy, listen, Stacy, we really have to talk about the girls.
Absolutely.
I'm having trouble with the girls.
Yes.
And what did Stacy tell you?
That she was in full agreement with everything I had. They knew Lexi was having aggression problems. She was getting in trouble at school almost, and they knew that it was something that they needed to work with.
So that's what, just a second, so that's what your best friend told you?
Right.
So what did she do from the time you started to tell her about the problems with the girls and the time that he finally removed the children from your daycare? What had your friend Stacy done?
Lexi would get in trouble for various different instances. She would go home and be grounded, that kind of thing.
I'm asking you whether her mother ever took her to a therapy session, whether took her to a counselor. Just give me a yes or a no.
Matt refused to let her go to counseling.
Just a second. Just give me a yes or a no.
Well, it's kind of a gray area because she wanted to take him to counseling and Matt refused.
You should never have cared for these children. Never in a million years should you have been involved with these 2 children with the attitude that you have towards him. In any event, you called the state and reported what you considered his aggressive moves toward you.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
He had every right to do that.
Exactly.
He did it on April 4th, 3.5 days afterwards, and after he saw Stacy at court filing papers.
Are
That's
they
when he
open
went
on the
down.
weekend?
Just a second. Are you asking me a question?
No, they're not.
Are you asking me a question?
They're open on Friday.
You too. You should never have cared for these children.
I agree. I've definitely
I never
learned
have
my
gotten
lesson.
him involved in taking your complaint outside to him, complaint that just happened to have been made at the same exact time that you had just had a telephone altercation with him about payment. Sit down. I'm not aggrieved at all by Mr. Finch's conduct in reporting your husband's conduct to the state and letting them come out and take a look at what's going on in your house, because based upon what you told me, there is inadequate supervision of children.
They didn't.
I'm speaking in your home, based upon what you just told me. What really burns me is your motivation for calling Child Protective Services about this father. That's what really burns me, because it was clear to me from reading the timeline in this, your motivation. You chose not to report the problems with the child generally. You chose to identify Mr. Finch as the possible perpetrator of a problem.
That's not, I told them the entire situation.
You want to tell you something, Miss Abarca? I don't believe you. And the reason I don't believe you is Stacy still your best friend?
Stacy and I are still friends. Yes.
That's why I don't believe you, because you would not have called Child Protective Services on your best friend. There is a difference between him calling the state, and the worst thing that can happen to you is you could be investigated and they might not give you a license to care for children in your house. And you calling Child Protective Services and by innuendo suggesting something inappropriate's going on. It was very subtle. And I've seen and heard over the course of 35 years that subtle innuendo that suggests that a father is in some way inappropriately touching his children, which causes all kinds of red lights to go on with Child Protective Services. And your motivations were just that, judgment on the counterclaim for $5,000. That's all.
Party's eyes squeezed and they step out.
Shannon Hayes is suing her ex-boyfriend, Michael Dorland, for breaking the door handle of her car, breaking her cell phone, and an assault.
Miss Hayes, according to the complaint that I've read, Mr. Dorland was your boyfriend for a period of time, and it is your claim that during the course of an argument, you were in your car, he damaged your car. Subsequently, I believe, He destroyed a cell phone that you had purchased, and he stepped on your hand, causing your hand to be injured. You want him to compensate you for those things. Mr. Dorland says none of that is true. You almost killed him in your car. He was trying to get out of your car. That you destroyed your own phone, and you also hurt your own hand. What happened first?
What happened first was my car.
Why don't you tell me about it?
On September 10th, Mr. Dorland and I were driving, and we were staying at a bed and breakfast. We had been in an argument. We got in my car. We're driving away.
Driving where?
Towards Manitou Springs. I stopped at a convenience store, and he was getting ready to get out, and he went to open the door, and he yanked the door open. But he yanked so hard that he broke the door handle.
Go ahead. What happened next?
And when he got upset because he broke it, he looked at me, he said, "I'm sorry I did that. I did not mean to yank it that hard." I said, "Get out of my car." He started to roll down the window, and when he rolled down the window, he jumped out of the car and proceeded to break the rearview mirror on the right-hand side.
Okay. What happened next?
Then I was pretty upset, so I just looked at him, and I put it in reverse, and I went back into Manitou Springs.
Where was he when you put it in
Standing
reverse?
at 7-Eleven.
How did he get out of the car?
He went out the window.
Okay, so you want him to pay for the broken handle and the broken mirror.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Dorland, let's do one thing at a time so we can keep this organized.
Sure.
Let's go.
I was trying to get out of the car because she was going to take me down to her friend's house, and I didn't know if they were going to jump me, beat me, or whatever.
Why would they do that?
She hangs around with some pretty low people. At that time, she was still hanging around with drug dealers and people that were borrowing her car and doing more damage to her car than what anybody else was doing.
You mean anybody
she'd
else?
lose her car.
You mean anybody else? You mean you?
No.
All right, why don't you tell me your version of what happened on September 10th?
We went down, we got to bed and breakfast, and then we were going down to Manitou, like she said. She started a fight, so I started walking back. Then I got in the car, we went to 7-Eleven, and lo and behold, we get ready to pull out of 7-Eleven. She goes, "Well, we're not going back to the bed and breakfast. I'm going back to see my friends. You're going with me." "No, I'm not." So I quickly grabbed the door, and I pulled it open to get it up, to open it, and it snapped. It's just a little piece of plastic. So I crawled out the window. She was in reverse moving the car when I was trying to get out the window.
Miss Hayes, once he broke the door handle and he wanted out of the car, why didn't you get out of the car and go over and open the door from the outside?
Because I was scared. He scared me.
Well, instead of being inside the car with him, you get out of the car if he was scaring you, and you're at a 7-Eleven, so you go over to his door. Either you go over to his door and you open the door, or you go to somebody else and say, "Would you open the door, please, because I want him out of my car," instead of staying in the car with him.
I wasn't thinking that at the time. I was just
Well, I
thinking, get out of
wasn't
my
thinking
car.
either. I tend to believe, Mr. Dorland, that you started to move the car while he was trying to get out through the window.
Yeah.
All right. What's next?
He wanted a cell phone, and he could not get one in his name.
You mean after this happened in September?
Yes.
After this happened in September, you made up at some point?
Yes.
How long did it take you to make up?
A couple of weeks.
Go ahead.
We had gotten back together. I took him to T-Mobile. The guy at the stand said, "Well, why don't you try it?" And I said, "No, my credit's terrible, can't do that." Turns out I could get him a phone in my name for $35. So we got it in my name, but he promised to pay me.
$35?
He paid $35. He paid the $35. He promised
he
to pay
paid
the
the
monthly bill.
$35.
Yes, he promised to pay the monthly bill.
Yes?
Eventually, we got into another argument at his house. I was getting everything packed up outside, and he wouldn't let me in. So I asked him to open the door, and as he opened the door, I got it open enough to stick my foot in. I said, "I want my phone, please." He said, "No, I'm not giving you your phone." I said, "I need my phone."
Well, he had paid for the phone, so it's not your phone, it was his phone.
He hadn't paid the monthly bill. He paid $35.
But there wasn't a monthly bill yet.
I hadn't got the bill yet, no.
Go ahead.
He took the phone and he broke it in half. He threw one half at me and he took the other half. And I had my cell phone in my hand. My cell phone dropped between the door and my foot. I went to pick up my cell phone. He stepped on my foot, or my hand. Excuse me. I got my cell phone, stepped into my car, and he told me he was sorry. And I said, "No, just leave me alone." And thereafter, I proceeded to call the police.
So $35 you don't get because that's part of your lawsuit for the cell phone, because he paid for the cell phone.
Okay.
Now, so let's talk about the hand, sir.
Your Honor, can I kind of tell you my version of that? Because
Yeah,
it's real quick.
I would love to hear it, and I would love to hear it quickly.
Okay. She drove up to my house, and when I open the door, I always put my foot right in front so that when she tries to kick her way in the house, she can't get in there. I was trying to keep her at bay. I shut the door and went out the back door and then went up to another store and was calling everybody I knew to come and witness this psychotic person throwing stuff at the windows. She was kicking on the door. There were footprints on the door. She kicked in the side of the doggy door. She broke into my house that evening. Here's a police report that specifies that.
Did you make up again?
No. I know I was pretty stupid to make up with her before.
Just a second. You made up with her more than once.
Yes, I did. I was trying to help her out. A mutual friend said that she was okay.
Get to the
but
hand, would you please?
last I talked to her, you know, everything was done and she was going to leave me alone.
Hand. Get to the injured hand.
There was no injured hand.
She called the police. What happened when the police came?
By the time they had gotten there, it really wasn't that bad.
How bad was it?
Well, it was bad enough to hurt me. I couldn't
Did you go
bend
to the
it.
doctor?
No.
Did you go to a hospital? Yes. No. Where do you work?
I'm a housewife.
Whose housewife?
My own.
Well, where's your husband?
I'm divorced.
Then you're not a housewife.
I'm a homemaker.
That's different. A homemaker for whom?
My mom. I'm unemployed.
Here you go. You were arrested?
Yeah, on another.
Outstanding warrants.
Wasn't for any domestic violence.
For what?
Unpaid ticket.
What kind of ticket?
On a DUI I had back in 2000.
That's not an antique, by the way, 2000.
No, but honestly, I should have had that paid, and I didn't, and I paid the price.
What do you do for a living, Mr. Dorland?
I'm a pipe fitter.
You work full-time?
Not anymore. I'm starting to. I was trying to start a business. Anytime I got anywhere close, she'd throw the kibosh in it. People didn't want me to work with them because she was calling them and going to the job sites.
Mr. Dorland, who picked her?
I did. I was trying to.
Not once, Mr. Dorland. Twice that I know of, when we only know each other about 7 minutes.
Yeah, that's not
How
so
long
good.
was this relationship that you had?
In all total, maybe about 3 months. I met her at a bar. A friend of mine said she was all right, and obviously I can't trust his word now.
Mr. Dorland is not Prince Charming. He's not your Prince Charming. Why don't you work?
For 5 years, I haven't been able to work because I've taken care of my children.
How old are your children?
They are 10, 8, and 5.
But they don't live with you.
Not now, they don't. Now I am looking for work.
Who do your children live with?
Their fathers.
Miss Hayes, I wish you good luck looking for a job. You and Mr. Dorland are no longer an item. Good. That makes me feel terrific.
Me too.
It's the best news I've heard all day. Your case is dismissed. Goodbye, good luck. Have a very, very happy life.
Psychiatrist Dr. Howard Richmond says publishing consultant Susan Gilbert scammed him on a book deal.
According to your complaint, Dr. Richmond, you retained Miss Gilbert's services because you were interested in publishing a book.
That is correct.
And she had, well, you had heard she had had some expertise in assisting people to get their works published. You gave her approximately $2,500, and it is your claim that she really defrauded you because she was not working solely in your best interest. You want not only your money back, but you want twice that amount of money as punitive damages. So I have a few questions before we get into this. Had you written a book?
Yes, I did.
And the subject?
It was called The Healing Field, a story about myself, a psychiatrist, and one of my patients who was dying from anorexia. Only when I got out of the box of my traditional training did my patient start to heal.
How long did it take you to do the book?
About 5 years.
And what brought you to Miss Gilbert?
I was at a publishing event in 2003, and the defendant was one of many experts that presented that day, and she said that she could help me get my book published.
How much was Miss Gilbert's fee?
Her fee was $150 for an hour of coaching over the phone.
And what kind of things did she coach you about?
Well, she talked about having a branding, who I was going to. Told me about this fantastic opportunity to be a co-author in a book along with big names such as Dr. Phil, Deepak Chopra, and Wayne Dyer. And I would need to pay $5,000 to, under a tight deadline, write a chapter in the book. So then in October of 2004, I wrote a check for $5,000, sent it to the publisher, Linda, and then 2 weeks later...
The publisher is not Linda. What's the name of the publisher of this book?
Her name is Linda, and her corporate
company
logo is Mentors Publishing House.
Never heard of them.
Neither had I.
So what'd you just write him a check for $5,000 for, Dr. Richmond?
Well, at the time...
Doctors are notoriously bad businessmen, sir.
It was a good sale to be associated with these big-name authors.
Yeah, but you got to do your own due diligence, Dr. Richmond. You know, if somebody said, I'm doing an ensemble work with Dr. Phil and some other notable people, you would think that this ensemble work would be published by somebody that you would heard of.
Well, there was 2 other books, so they had a track record of putting out 2 books previously. Correct.
In how many years?
I'm not sure exactly.
So in their whole history as a publishing house, all you knew of was 2 books they had published.
Correct. But there were celebrities in the first 2 editions.
Like who?
Zig Ziglar.
I never heard of Zig Ziglar.
Donald Trump is in the 3rd edition. So it sounded really good.
What 3rd edition?
Well, this book that I was enticed to be a part of.
Has it been published?
It just came out in the last couple of weeks.
Is that right?
Yes. In fact, Judge Judy, would you like a copy of it? I've autographed
I'd just like to
one
look
for
at it.
you.
I don't want a copy. I have enough to read. By the way, in case you want a picture of Zig Ziglar, this is what he looks like.
That's him.
All right, so you sent $5,000 into this publisher. Go ahead, what happened?
I wrote the chapter. Then in late January, early February 2005, there were some changes in the publication and a delay in when the book was coming out. I started to get uncomfortable with the changes that were happening.
Like what changes?
Instead of 40 authors, there was going to be 70 authors. Chuck Norris was going to be on the cover of the book. He's not in alignment with the work that I do. And then on February 7th, I discovered that the defendant, my coach, was not only getting compensation from me, but also from Linda, the publisher. In exchange for bringing people in, she would get to write the foreword and have her picture on the cover of the book. And that was in an email that I only discovered February 7th. She never disclosed this to me. I was shocked. My confidence in her began to evaporate.
Did you have to pay $5,000 to get into this book?
I did not.
And the reason you didn't have to pay $5,000 to get into this book is because you brought other clients into the book?
Right. The
Is that,
relationship.
just a
yes.
second.
Yes.
My questions, your answers. Did you at any time tell Dr. Richmond that you were involved as a co-author in this project, but that you were being compensated in part for bringing in other prospective authors?
Yes.
When did you tell him that?
At the inception of the discussion of whether he would come in or not, because one of the questions that they had was whose picture would be on the front, and at that time, the publisher had offered that my picture would be in that larger space there on the cover.
That doesn't answer my question. You can write a chapter, but if everybody who's writing a chapter pays $5,000 for your bringing in other authors, you were getting a free ride. My question is, did you tell that to Dr. Richmond?
I did not state it in those words.
Well, those are the words that you should have used, Ms. Gilbert.
If I could clarify one thing for Judge Judy, though, the $5,000 fee is not a fee. You made a commitment to purchase 1,000 copies.
There's no difference between buying 1,000 copies and paying $5,000 to get in, because it all goes to the publisher. They are at least assured of 1,000 copies, and if they get 70 authors to each contribute $5,000, that means that they have guaranteed themselves 70,000 copies of the book being sold, which guarantees them a spot on some list that says we've already sold 70,000 copies, and therefore you should read this book. That's sort of a no-brainer.
It's
right,
marketing.
Ms. Gilbert?
Absolutely, it's marketing.
So that wasn't explained to him, that the $5,000 is that you can get 1,000 copies of this book. You don't have 1,000 friends. What you're going to do is you're going to take pieces of your library. You put 500 in one house and 500 in another house, and some in the kitchen and some in the living room. I've written books, I know. I got stacks of them all over my house. Some were sold, some did not. Listen to me. You had an obligation to tell him that you were also representing other people who were going to be contributing to this book, and in exchange for your cooperation in securing other people, which the publisher wanted, because I guarantee you, Dr. Phil didn't have to pay $5,000 to get into the book. Chuck Norris didn't have to pay $5,000 to get into the book. Nice-looking man. They don't know who he is. You got to pay the $5,000. It's marketing.
It's marketing, and that's the point. All of the coaching calls that
you
Howard
have
and I
to
had
tell
done.
him. Can I say this for a second, Bert? Sure. Don't get too involved with it. Let's see. We have people like Dan Kennedy, Cynthia Bull, Brian Tracy, Carol Ann Hamilton. How many people did you represent here, Miss Gilbert?
I represented 4 people.
And did each of those people pay $5,000?
Yes, they did.
Okay, because they were not celebrities.
Absolutely.
Did each of those other 4 people know about the other people?
I did not spell out everything as it's coming out in this courtroom, but Howard knew that I was inviting him in and I was inviting other people to participate, and I explained how it worked.
You should have explained the whole piece to him. You left out some very important things.
That doesn't take away the benefit that he would have received and all the things that we discussed.
He's not a child, Miss Gilbert.
You're right.
He's not a child. So what you're supposed to do is, if he is retaining you in what I consider an almost quasi-fiduciary relationship, you don't treat him like a child. You give him all the facts and then let him make a judgment. Now, it might have been a wrong judgment for him not to participate in this book. He might have gotten his name in print, so at least he was a published author. But your responsibility to your client, if he was your primary client, was to make sure that he had all the facts. Now, did you get your book published?
Not yet.
You got a possibility?
Of course.
Good. Now, I don't necessarily think Miss Gilbert is dishonest. I think that she didn't realize who her master was. Her master was the person who had hired her to help him publish his book. Quite honestly, Dr. Richmond, in all probability, had you not gotten your money back, because you got your $5,000
No,
back.
I did not.
You did not?
No, I did not.
Why not?
Well, as a matter of fact, when I decided to withdraw from the project and ask the publisher for my money back, on February 25th, the publisher agreed to send me the check that day. I waited. No check. Then I discover my coach, my agent, told her directly not to give me my money back.
How do you know that?
I heard it verbally from the defendant, and also I have an email from the publisher that confirms the conversation.
What did you say to the publisher?
I don't know what was written there.
I'm not asking you what was written here. I know what was written here. I'm asking you what you said to the publisher that resulted in the publisher not sending him back his check.
I care very deeply, even though it doesn't appear that it's coming out that way. I care about my coaching clients.
I asked you what you told the publisher.
That I wanted to speak with Howard before he withdrew because I felt he was making a really bad business decision, that everything that he and I had been working towards for months would be helpful in this book release. And so I wanted an opportunity to speak with him.
Well, did you speak to him?
I did, and he still withdrew.
Just a second. Did you then call back the publisher and say?
Multiple times.
And say, give him back his check?
Absolutely. Multiple times I have requested, and I thought that she would. But Dr. Richmond has taken him
But this
to court.
says, yes, I held off sending the check because of my conversation with Susan.
Which is what I said, that I wanted to speak with Howard.
So you never got your money back?
No, Your Honor.
He took them to court and won a judgment.
Did you get paid?
No.
When did you get your judgment?
June 6th, and I have a copy of that if you would like to see it.
I would.
It's June 1st.
You have any idea why you haven't gotten your money?
Lack of integrity.
Have you called them?
Yes.
And what have they said?
No response. Tried to get the money from the bank account. No money there. Cat and mouse game.
Her client has said, I want my money back. The people are ready to send you your check. You say, don't send him his check. I want to talk to him. That's not up to you.
If he's hired me as his coach, and I feel that he's making a mistake, I'd like to speak with him before that happens.
You had no business speaking to the publisher about him. You don't know who your master is in this situation. You took money from him. You are his advocate.
As I was advocating for him that this was a good project.
He's not a baby. It's up to him to make a judgment as to whether or not he believes that he wants to go forward with this project. You know, Chuck Norris is a very nice man. He says, I don't want to be in a book with Chuck Norris on the cover. I don't know why. I've met Chuck Norris. Got a lovely man. He's got a lovely wife. Their philosophies may be inconsistent. Who knows? That's not up to you. That's up to him. How much did he pay you?
How much do you pay me?
Yeah.
A total of $2,500 over 6 months for 17 sessions. And when I begin to work with someone, Judge
So
Judy,
far, he's out $5,000 plus another $2,500, and he doesn't have a book. And the $5,000 of that $7,500, put it down. $5,000, Miss Gilbert, out of the $7,500 is because of you. Sounds to me like better practice would be not to come in front of 10 million people and tell your story, but to give him back his $2,500. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $2,500. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
20-year-old Catherine Gonzalez is suing her ex-boyfriend, 20-year-old exterminator Zachary Finney, for breaking their apartment lease and for a loan to have his teeth fixed.
So you two people, when you were under 20, decided to take up housekeeping together, according to what I read in your complaint, and you leased an apartment. Yes. The time you leased this apartment together, were you working?
Yes, I was working.
And how much did you earn a week?
I got $9 an hour. I'd get like about $400 or $500 every 2 weeks.
Well, is it $400 every 2 weeks or $500 every 2 weeks?
The months differed, but I know in December when we moved in, I made $1,083.10 in December. No.
In December. Did you work overtime for Christmas during that time?
I worked a little bit more hours, but...
Okay. So let's say you made $500 every 2 weeks.
Yes.
Okay? And you, what kind of work were you doing?
I was a mover, and I made about, say, $350 every week.
So you made about $1,400
Yes, ma'am.
a month. And what kind of an apartment did you rent?
A one-bedroom,
How much was the rent?
$530.
When did you sign the lease?
We signed it in November, but it began December 1st, 2004.
And it was a 6-month lease?
It was a 1-year lease.
How long did you live there?
I lived there until June.
So you lived there for 6 months?
Yes.
And then you moved out?
Yes.
How long did you live there?
I lived there until September 30th of this year.
So you stayed on an extra 3 months?
I'd say almost 4.
Did you pay the rent for the 4 months that you lived there?
Yes.
They're coming after you for the 2 months rent that remains on the lease after he moved out?
Yes, 2 months. He didn't pay rent.
You want him to pay those 2 months?
Yes. And also, he had porcelain veneers put on before we moved into the apartment even. And he promised he would pay me back for those when we went to Mexico to get his porcelain veneers.
How long ago was that?
That was last fall. So
a year ago?
Yes, a year ago.
Forget about it. I'm not interested in something that happened a year ago. Then you moved in together, you pulled money. Did you have a joint bank account?
Yes.
Or no?
Yes.
Yeah. Get over it, Ms. Gonzalez. Okay. Now, why do you think that he should be responsible solely for the last 2 months' rent? You moved out in June.
He promised me he would stay there until the lease was over. I told him, he didn't want to live with his parents. I said, you don't have to worry. I won't ever make you live back with your parents. As long as you stay there, you can stay there. I trust you. And he promised that he would stay there until the lease was up.
Well, didn't you promise him you were going to stay there until the lease was up when you signed the lease with him?
Yes, but until he asked me to leave, then...
He asked you to leave, why?
There was a lot of reasons. I could have left before. I stayed there to help him pay rent, and really that was the only thing I was staying for towards the end. And the moment he told me that I could leave, I was happy. He said, please leave, and I said, okay.
Because he was making everybody's life miserable.
Yes. He was...
Well, but I still don't get your position that it was okay for you to leave and stick him with the rent, but it's not okay for him to leave and stick you with the rent, or at least half of it.
I would have stayed there, but he told me that I could leave.
Miss Gonzalez, stop being a baby. Two 20-year-olds, if they're not getting along, don't stay with each other. That's why police come to houses, because people get hot-tempered and nasty stuff that goes on in people's homes when they're not getting along.
Mm-hmm.
So you left.
Yeah.
And he paid the rent.
Yeah, he paid the rent.
So?
And he should have continued to pay it until December. Also, he signed...
You should have continued to pay it after you left in June. Where did you go?
I went to live with my dad. And...
Well, if you went to live with your dad, then you had plenty of money. You should have given him
No,
half
I did
the
not
rent.
have plenty of money. I had bills.
Listen to me. You should have given him half the rent. Said, I'm leaving. Too bad it didn't work out. We shouldn't live together. I'll give you half the rent.
I have a piece of paper, though, that says he owes me $800 per month for rent and expenses, regardless of whether we're living. It doesn't say, not if Zach doesn't live there. It doesn't say any conditions on it. And so that was my guarantee that he would stay there and pay the rent, because he signed a piece of paper saying that he would.
Let me see it. I, Zachary Finney, will give $800 a month for rent or other reasons to Catherine Gonzalez for a period of 1 year from December 1st, 04 to December 1st, 05. What does that mean, sir?
To get the apartment that we moved into, I had a lease that I had prior to living there with my roommates. I had an apartment with them, I moved out, and my other roommate was supposed to take that over. He left, and that went on my credit, so I couldn't get approved. The reason I did that is the apartments asked me to do it so we could get approved to move in there. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to move in there.
So this wasn't for her.
It was to get us approved to live there.
Is that right? Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
All right, give this back to her. All right, now why are they just going after you for the last 2 months of this rent, Miss Gonzalez?
Because my name was on the lease.
So he's not even liable on the lease?
No, but this piece of paper was my guarantee that he would not...
That wasn't your guarantee. That's not the reason it was signed. And so the rent is $530 a month?
Yes.
Did you give them notice you were moving out, sir?
No, I did not.
Why not?
I've been paying the rent ever since she moved out. It's September. We had a hurricane hit Louisiana, Katrina, and a hurricane that was going to hit Houston, Rita. Well, I'm an exterminator, and my customers started canceling, and I work off commission. If I don't work, I don't get paid. And I was out of work probably almost 2 weeks, I would say. I asked her for help, and she kept giving me a runaround about why she couldn't help me, so I just left. I wasn't going to stay there.
I got you. I got you.
Okay.
Well, in any event, you did have an agreement, and your agreement was each of you would pay half the rent. Is that your agreement when you
Yes.
moved in? And if there were 2 months left remaining on the lease, that means that each of you would be responsible for $530. Is that right?
Yes.
Well, you think it's fair, Mr. Finney, that you pay $530?
No, I don't.
Well, it is. It is, sir. You paid for the 4 months rent in the apartment, but you lived in the apartment for 4 months.
Yes.
And from what I gather from Miss Gonzalez, it was by mutual understanding that you left. She wasn't happy there. You weren't happy with her there. She was more than happy to leave. Is that right?
Yes.
Well, I think it's reasonable that each of you is responsible for the last 2 months that remain on this lease. And next time you decide to set up housekeeping with somebody, you better make sure it's somebody that's going to either stick it out with you, or if they're not going to stick it out with you, then you can afford to pay the rent by yourself. Do you understand? Yeah. It's not his responsibility to pay this entire amount, nor is it yours. Anyway, judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $500.
Once upon a time, in a small fog-covered village, there was a brave girl named Lily. She lived at the edge of the village, near a dense, eerie forest where no one dared to go. The villagers whispered of a ghost that haunted the woods, but Lily wasn't afraid. She was curious. One night, when the moon was full and the air was thick with mist, Lily decided to enter the forest. As she walked deeper into the woods, the trees seemed to close in around her, their branches creaking like old bones. Suddenly, a ghostly figure appeared before her, a pale, sad spirit with hollow eyes. The ghost wailed, "Leave this place or you shall be cursed." But Lily, with a steady voice, said, "I'm not here to harm you. Why are you so sad?" The ghost was taken aback. No one had ever spoken to him like this before. He revealed that he had been a lost soul for centuries, bound to the forest by a curse. He longed for peace but couldn't find it alone. Lily's heart swelled with compassion. "I'll help you," she promised. She spent the night gathering herbs and performing an ancient ritual she had learned from her grandmother. As dawn approached, the ghost began to glow with a soft light. With a final grateful smile,